Welcome back to another episode of the Easy Button Investor Podcast. I'm your host, Ruud-Johnson, and today's show, we are going to be going into a lot of the most popular questions that I've been getting asked live or in our community or on Instagram. So without further ado, let's get right into the show. Well, today's show, you guys, is a fun one. I usually do once a month these Q&A episodes. It's going to be a part one and a part two. So we'll release these throughout the week, part one and part two, because these go a little longer, usually about 15 minutes with the amount of Q&A that we do. Today's questions are really focused on business building. As you guys hear me talk about a lot, most real estate investors and agents are decent at sales, decent at making money, but terrible at running businesses. That's what the show is really about, is to help you build a machine that does real estate deals rather than you wearing every hat in your business, constantly chasing that next deal on that deal hamster wheel, as so many of us live on. With that being said, we have to focus on basic skills, advanced skills, team building, a lot of things that are boring, because business is boring. Business should be boring at a higher level. As you're talking about managing people, managing team, managing finances, managing vision, managing culture, those are things that are not exciting as closing a deal. They're not exciting as getting that check. They're more boring, they're more monotonous, but they're important, and they have to happen day in, day out for you to build the business that you want to build and live the life that you want to live, because we're all building towards something. So the first question I got this week in School Community, which is our community that you guys can join that are at the same point in the journey, a couple hundred of us in there now. We're getting on live calls during the week and we're really building the business together. And one of the questions I got was from, his name is Rowan. Him and his brothers are flippers and investors in, I believe, Connecticut. And he had a question around, should he be trying to monetize deals that aren't fully off-market discounted deals, but maybe there's a little bit of equity, and selling them to a buddy that wants to buy Airbnbs and kind of building that part of his business where, you know, they might be $50,000 of built-in equity and he can sell that buyer those deals. And these guys are pretty experienced, have done a lot of flips. They're now starting to build their off-market pipeline, which most people in our group are building that to some degree. My answer to him was essentially that this is just another version and another twist on golden object syndrome, on that shiny object syndrome, on chasing the next shiny, bright, flashy thing. And the reason behind that, why I prefaced it and packaged it this way for him, is because the reality is you can't ride two horses at once. You can't chase two rabbits at once. There's a bunch of different ways to explain that. But at the end of the day, you can't do two things at once. And I explained to him, this seems simple. This seems like just selling a deal to your buddy where there's $50,000, $60,000 of built-in equity. But in the reality, what it actually is just another symptom of golden object, shiny object syndrome. Just another old symptom of that same thing. Why do I believe that? Well, because of the fact that if you're going to go that route, you need to build a whole Rolodex of buyers. He's kind of a wholesaler and a flipper. You have to add on to the disposition side of your business with different kinds of buyers. You have to underwrite properties differently. You have to frame and package them differently. So you're changing every function of your business when you haven't fully scaled the first function of your company. So for you guys that are doing wholesaling but want to add on seller finance or novations or flips, or you guys that are flipping want to add on development or syndication or lending or whatever else it is, realize that you're not just changing a small thing, you're changing your whole entire business model. And now you're trying to build two businesses, two teams, two products at the same time. And that was my advice to him on that deal when he came and asked that question. The second thing is, and this is from Carl, who's very active in our community, question that I got actually on today. I'm filming this on August 2nd, 2024. On our community call this morning, I got a question from Carl asking about for his business, which he is an investor in Utah, actually moving to Phoenix area, doing off-market deals, how to know what to focus on next. And I actually made this its own whole podcast, which you guys should definitely go watch. It was the one where I talk about the difference between 6 and 7 figure and 8 figure investors. And what I told him is the easiest way to identify where you're stuck in your business is by going to the LCO equation, the leads, conversions, operations equation. And I asked him, Carl, do you believe that you have an understanding of your product underwriting to a degree where you can fulfill on your promise to sellers? Yes, I do. Cool. Great. Do you believe that the emotion I'm really going for here is, do you feel overwhelmed by the amount of leads you're getting to the point where you can't keep up and you feel like you're underwater and things are slipping through the cracks? And he said, no. And you should feel that way. You should be stacking enough cash, talking to enough sellers where you have the money to invest in lead flow and you feel overwhelmed with the amount of leads that you're getting every single day. Why? Well, once you feel overwhelmed, now you can go to the next part, which is conversions. Okay. Conversions is then, okay, Carl, you feel overwhelmed by those leads. What are you doing to solve that? Who are you hiring on your sales team? What sales process and sales infrastructure are you building? The emotion I want you to feel there at that point is overwhelmed, because once you have an abundance of lead flow and you have the right sales process, sales infrastructure, and sales team, then you should be selling so much of your service, which is buying deals off market. If you're listening to this podcast, you should be selling so much of that service that what ends up happening is you feel overwhelmed because now you don't know how to do transaction coordination for that many properties at once. You don't know how to find that many buyers if you're wholesaling. You don't know how to run enough crews if you're flipping. You don't know where to get the money. Now you have an operations problem. Okay. And it trickles down from leads to conversion to operations. And now you're going to fix the hole in your operation with who you need to hire, who you need to fire, what you need to fix, how to raise money. If you're doing doing flips. If you're doing wholesaling, it's how to build a buyer's list, how to build relationships. You're going to follow the hiring ladder I talk about all the time. Who do you need to hire on the admin side, the fulfillment side, like a transaction coordinator, the marketing side, the sales side, and the leadership side? This is what I talk about a lot. This is building a company, not a hustle. And that's a good equation to always go back to if you guys are listening to this out there in listener land as you build your off-market funnel. So we'll continue on, guys. And that's a very important one. The next question that I get early and often, anytime I end up speaking is, how do you get a seller who is, even you guys that are very experienced, how do you get a seller who is not wanting to talk price, is rejecting you at all points, and just throwing it back in your face, make me an offer? The frame that I always use is you want to feel like it's you and the seller on the same team. Because what a lot of you guys do is you treat them like they're your enemy. They are not your enemy. The market is your enemy. And you need to make them believe that the market is their enemy and your enemy in this deal. They need to feel like you're on their team. Because when you start asking a lot of personal questions about their motivation, their life, they're going to get defensive because they feel like you're going to use that information to take from them, to take equity, to take price, to take dollars out of their pocket ultimately. But you need to help them understand that you're asking that information to give them the best possible offer and solution of their problem, so that based on the market condition, which is the enemy, the market is the enemy, okay? Because if their home was worth $1 million, you'd give them $1 million. So the market is the enemy. And using market data to help them understand that of, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Seller, the reason that I'm asking you about your mortgage, about the condition of your property, about your reason for wanting to sell isn't because I want to pay you less. In fact, I'd love to pay you as much as possible. I'd love to pay you, $100,000 more than what Zillow is saying. But the reality is I'm a for-profit company, not a non-profit company. And based on that, I need to know this so I can get you the most money possible. Because if I don't and I have to guess, I'm not going to be able to offer you as much. And that's what most companies are going to do, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. They're going to just lowball you because they don't want to take the risk. Well, I'm going to spend extra time here with you and be on your team, on your side to find this stuff out so that you and I can work towards a solution and a price that's as high as the market can sustain for what I want to do with the property. That's the first solution. The second solution is now helping them understand why they're going with you and probably taking slightly less than they are on market to work with you and using your service. And what that looks like is, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, now that we have an understanding on that, the reason that you're going to go with me and take $50,000 less than going on the market is because of the fact that, let me ask you a question here. If you have to go back to Oregon for this property you just inherited, you have to fly out there 4 times round trip, you and your husband, you have to find a babysitter for your kids, a camp for your dog to go to, you're missing life things, you're up late at night stressing. What is all of that worth for you dollar-wise to never have to do that again? And on top of that, you get to pick your moving date. You never have to come out here. We pay closing costs. All that happens is a mobile notary comes out to you. You respond to a couple emails from title and escrow. What is that worth to you? Is that worth $50? And to be honest with you, after you pay all the fees to an agent and you fly back and forth and you do all that, you're probably only saving $20,000. Is that worth $20,000 to you? And that's not an exact situation, but now you paint the picture of not only why you're offering what you're offering, the market's the enemy, you're on their team, but you're also painting the picture to them real time of why they're choosing you and your service. And that frame will serve you in a really, really, really good way as you guys have these issues with sellers, which you guys naturally are going to have these issues and objections. Naturally, guys, sellers are going to try to avoid selling to you if you do not actually go through a process like this most of the time. That's just the reality of it. Thanks for sticking around for another episode of the Easy Button Investor Podcast. That was a part 1. Every month I try to do 1 to 2 Q&A episodes. Very important. And I hope you guys get value out of there. Send me a DM if you guys have questions, or if you're in our school community, let me know. As always, you guys, I cannot express enough that you are only one, even if you've done a ton of deals, you are one deal away. You're one tweak away from changing your life and your business forever.